All right. Oops, you can't see me. Okay, so I'm just sharing really here on a new two new talks, one by Lee Smolin and um one by Herbert or Alain Connes. And Lee Smolin, he gave a talk at Caltech for Caltech live stream on qualia or consciousness and cosmology. And um, he was mumbling so people couldn't really understand him. But if you looked up his paper that he wrote recently, a couple years ago, he is referring to qualia as originating from the two sphere, which is the quantum sphere that's non-commutative, and that's what Herbert J. Bernstein relies on for the super dense quantum teleportation. And Lee Smolin was a student of Herbert J. Bernstein at Hampshire College in 1974. Hello, I'm just quickly giving some information here on a couple of recent talks. First one was Lee Smolin, and I have the link in the video description. And the second one is a new talk by Alain Connes, and he gives his best description of his non-commutative cosmology also. And basically he's saying how it's kind of hard to explain, but essentially it's the same music theory concept. He refers to music theory in his second part two of his talk that he just gave yesterday or a few hours ago or something. But those are at the Field Institute on YouTube. But the idea is that first you have a non-commutative time frequency as non-locality, and then that creates a non-commutative space-time. Okay. I'm sorry, what are you saying? The username shall tell you of your publication. Oh, I think it's spam. You must be spam. Is that my first spam live stream? Anyway, so the idea is that the light, so if you think of in non-commutativity, their light has gravitational mass, but it doesn't have a center of mass. So the mass of light is from the non-commutative space-time. Okay, okay, I hear you. So let me just get out. I'm just gonna say what I need to say here, and I'm gonna end the stream. So I'm not being real conversational right now, so I apologize for that. But the so if you think of like in calculus where you have the point as a circle that changes direction without any movement as the infinitesimal, and he's saying that, well, what you have is the wavelength is the inverse of the Dirac line element as frequency. And so you have this non-commutative frequency that then creates space-time as a line element from the discrete frequency of light. And then the then the inverse of that line element is becomes the wavelength for space-time. And so so this is proven by the transition frequencies for time being non-commutative. And so what they have to do is they have to use a quadrature where they are essentially they're squaring the non-commutativity to convert it into a commutative um, wavelength. Um, but the whole point is that when it's non-local, then you don't it's before you square it. And so any kind of particle or wavelength is um, actually a undertone is a beat that's based on this phase, non-commutative phase of squaring the non-commutative time and frequency. So, in terms of there's no longer geometric distance. There's just a non-local frequency that's then superluminal because it's non-local, and you can access this through listening in quantum biology, and it's essentially a Planck level black hole that is the source of all matter also. And Professor Sean Majid, he even refers to Buddha in one of his books. I found it's on my blog, but he goes that the non-commutative space-time explains Buddhism because it's at the Planck scale, so it's even more fundamental than standard quantum physics. And when I corresponded with Sean Majid, he's like, "Well, there's no proof for this, but actually, um, there are there are experiments that show this." And so, but the key point is that this creates the qualia of our brain perception. And so both Lee Smolin and Alain Connes has referred to this as our brain perception. Also, he says this is how the brain is doing this all the time. It's a inverse Fourier transform that's on a two sphere, like a quantum sphere. And Alain Connes says that that's the truth of music theory is the quantum two sphere. And now Lee Smolin is saying the same thing, that the truth of listening to one music tone is actually a two sphere. And I had emailed Lee Smolin my research, and he never responded back to me, but I had told him how I had studied from Herbert J. Bernstein, and I had made that same connection, between the quantum two sphere and music theory. Okay, that's all I have to say. So I'll respond to your chat comments in the comment section after I end the stream. So continue for which it is that you desire to upload. Okay. Can you hear me though? I'm talking very quietly because it's late. But anyway, I will post the links in the video description, and um essentially you have an inherent curvature to space-time based on this. So in other words, what Alain Connes is saying is that the space-time non-commutativity arises from the quantum non-commutativity, and it does so by creating space-time out of the quantum time frequency, and that's due to the invariance of light. So when relativity is assuming an invariance, and so that's also anti-gravity, that all matter is actually made of light, and then there's also a secret anti-gravity to the light. and that's been proven in the weak measurement experiments where they call it a negaparticle. So it's not just antimatter, but it's actually a anti-mass particle that's gravitationally repulsive. And um, so this can be accessed directly through meditation. It's just a matter of getting beyond the commutative geometry, like brain brainwashing from the standard physics that's been going on since Plato and Newton and Einstein. But even Einstein realized at the end of his life that the foundation of reality is discrete and non-commutative. So um, that's all I'm gonna say right now. And thanks for people listening, a couple people here, and feel free to add more comments uh, in the comments section. And I hope everybody has a good night. And let's see, I have the blog. I have the blog link. So anyway, yeah, I'll just leave it. I'll let people look at the links themselves. But um, it's the thing about the calculus is that it's assuming a commutative continuous space-time. But Alain Connes' big point is that the only with non-commutativity can you have the continuous space-time, like a continuous function, uh, coexisting with the discrete, like with a discrete measurement. And the way that happens is through this conversion of line element as a variable into a geometric wavelength. And the way that conversion of line element happens is as the inverse of the frequency. So normally people think of frequency as an angular frequency as wavelength, but actually the frequency is inherently just pure time. And so the inverse of the frequency has a non-commutative time of the future and the past overlapping. And then that's what creates it's so he says there's you cannot escape the flowing of time. There's always this dynamic of time because of this asymmetric time. And this is another point of Lee Smolin. He says that he was asked this question at the end of his talk in the Caltech, but he argues that the foundation of reality is not symmetric, despite you know the standard model of physics assuming a symmetry and supersymmetry and all this. But his argument is that it's actually asymmetric and that it's very difficult to get a phase shift of the universe to cause a symmetry breaking of space-time. So it's much more. He agrees with Roger Penrose that time is inherently asymmetric, and so this is Alain Connes' big point. Also, is that time is inherently asymmetric, and my focus is on what that means for entropy and our ecological crisis on the planet. Is because if we got physics wrong as the foundation, then that means it caused us to create technology that is inherently destroying life on Earth. And um, and so that's the connection I made is between the entropy, the gravitational entropy is increasing on Earth as we try to decrease the entropy of matter by constructing commutative geometry based technology. And since it's got the wrong space time to the technology, then we're inherently destroying life because the foundation of life is this asymmetric time as negative entropy from the quantum non-locality. And so I think that I'm glad that Lee Smolin is following along with what Alain Connes is saying. He doesn't Lee Smolin doesn't use the same. He doesn't use the word non-commutative, but he uses the word asymmetry or not symmetric, and that there's an inherent flowing to time and the so I think Lee Smolin, he's a bit slow to get to where Alon Khan is at, but I think he's starting I think he's starting to figure it out. That's what I'm gonna say. The what Yeah, what I'm describing when I use words, I'm just talking about concept, whereas what Roger Penrose calls as proto-consciousness is inherently precognitive. So the time is actually proto-consciousness, and you can only experience that through listening as meditation. So whenever I'm talking, that's not the real thing. It's like Bruce Lee saying, "Don't look at my finger." So don't listen to my words because that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like listening as meditation, as the actual experience. So it's using logical inference, the logical inference of time is overlapping and based on the truth of music. And so anyway, I'm gonna probably be going into it more um, with the interview that I'll be doing with Crypto Alchemy on the Crypto Alchemy channel. So yeah, it's really just about music. So you don't even need to use any words when it comes down to it. But there's a certain way of understanding music as meditation. So I got lots of books on it that I've compiled information. Okay, so I'm just gonna end the stream. Thanks for your time. Have a good night.